Vindictus is back. Or is it actually? Today I'm going to give you a preview to Vindictus Defying Fate and answer the question what it is supposed to be. A remaster, a remake, a new interpretation. Let's see about that. Because I played the current state of the game, and today I'm going to talk about what I experienced and also going to talk about the positive things and also the negative things, at least from my perspective. And let me tell you, it changed. And I think not for the better, but some people have other opinions, so we're going to talk about that. And as always, if you like the video, please consider leaving a like and also subscribing. That would mean a lot to me. All right, let's talk about Vindictus Defying Fate. What is it? The game is based on the original Vindictus, which was an MMO. And the Steam page of the original Vindictus even says MMO, but Vindictus Defying Fate actually says single player and online co-op. So they kind of scrapped the MMO tag out of the game description. But let's quickly talk about the original Vindictus. This was an action MMO that had its release around 2010, and it's actually still one of my favorite MMOs up to date. And if we think about 2010 MMOs, I think that this game was far ahead of its competition. Because while other MMOs from this time looked something like this, no offense, Vindictus actually already looked like this and also felt like this. And in terms of graphics, animation, combat system, to be honest, nothing came even close to what Vindictus was at that time. So it is no wonder that my PC actually completely bricked every time I started up the game. And if you played original Vindictus, I'm going to give you some nostalgia, because this always happened. But the thing is, today I can tell you that this was not necessarily my PC. The game was based on the Source engine, and I think that they already pretty much pushed the engine to its limits when the game came out already. So that means that original Vindictus even has performance issues up to date on the newest PCs. And this might also be the reason why they started production on Vindictus Defying Fate. But how close it actually is to the original Vindictus, you will find out in this video. But if you don't know Vindictus, quickly going back to what it actually was. It was a free-to-play action MMO with a pretty deep combo action system where most of the skills that you actually got in the game altered and upgraded your moveset and your combos that you can do. And combat was very flashy and very fast in this game. The game had different characters which basically functioned as alternatives to classes, and the playstyle of each of them was very unique. Every character had 2 different weapons to choose from, and the game was gender locked. So you actually played a character with a name, but there was a lot of customization options to make the character look like you wanted it to look. And beyond that, you could also use transformations mid-battle to either Paladin or Dark Knight. You could choose which one you like, and that just made the whole fight looking more intense and more crazy over the top. The game was PvE focused, so it had PvP modes, but they were not really worth mentioning. And all the content was instance based. So you started levels like missions with sometimes smaller, sometimes bigger areas, mostly ending in a boss fight. And at least for the first years of the game, content became very tough very quickly, so you had to actually queue with other players and play the whole game. And this was basically what made the game an actual MMO. And even today, 15 years later, the game is still adding content. We got 2 new characters early 2025, so we now have 26 different characters, and each of them having 2 different weapons. However, in February 2024, Nexon first revealed Vindictus Defying Fate. And what I can tell you is it's going to be a remake, not a remaster, not a second part, it's going to be a remake. And this week the game had its first alpha test on Steam, where people could actually try it out. And it seems that half of the players liked it and the other half didn't really like it, so let's talk about why. But how much Vindictus is in Vindictus Defying Fate? Quick disclaimer, this is a early alpha, so it's subject to change, so everything I say is just based on this alpha. The game could be completely different on release. But I think it gives an idea on what they want to create or which direction they are heading to. So what I can tell you is the story is the same. So you're going through the same story with the same characters, the same bosses, in the same order actually. You talk to the same NPCs. They just basically completely remade it. However, they actually seem to slightly shift the game into another direction. Let me tell you how. First of all, compared to the original Vindictus, the game is told mostly through cutscenes and voice dialogues, which is a difference to the original game where the story was mostly told through text dialogue. Also in the original Vindictus, the story was mostly told outside of mission dungeons, and now they are basically combining mission dungeons with cutscenes and story elements, so they are trying to tell big parts of the story inside of these dungeons. In Vindictus Defying Fate, you can basically do everything solo. You can have AI companions, which are basically the other playable characters. And you can also swap your active character at any time at the checkpoints that are scattered through these levels. And overall, it seems that they are mostly focusing more on the story of the game and the storytelling of the game, and also more on the single player experience and people who actually enjoy playing single player and playing by themselves. Which also fits the fact that the MMO tag is actually taken out from Vindictus Defying Fate. What I can also tell you is that I have the feeling that Vindictus Defying Fate is heading more towards a Soulslite direction with different design decisions. So for example, you have bonfires as checkpoints in the levels where you can rest, which heals your character, and it also respawns some enemies. And it also refills your heal pots, so you don't have to craft them anymore, which was the case in original Vindictus. You can actually fill them up at these checkpoints. And the combat is still very action heavy, but it's focused more on the aspect of every action counts. It's focused more on precision, using skills at the right time, perfect dodges, parries, and just playing the whole boss fight a little slower. The bosses also have hit stun, and they also have a stagger bar, so you can actually stagger them and trigger a very strong attack with that. So as I would expect from a Soulslite direction, the combat is a lot slower than the original Vindictus. So as an example, you might think it doesn't look slow, but if you take this combat from Vindictus Defying Fate and compare it to the combat from the original Vindictus, which looked like this. It is definitely slower and more precise. But first, as you know me, let's talk about the good things of the game. Starting with the graphics. The graphics are just amazing. For a game that's probably going to be a free-to-play game, this is just top-notch graphic quality. And I didn't expect anything else from Vindictus. Like, the original one was far ahead of its competition in 2010, and this game is taking it to the next level again. The same goes for animations, for the sound, which is very clean and very impactful. And even for an alpha, the graphics and the sound and the animations just feel very, very polished, and it can just become better. So if we talk about combat and we ignore the fact if you like the slower combat or not, I can tell you that the combat feels good, it's impactful, it's still fun, and they know what they are doing. By basically focusing on the staggers, the perfect dodges, the parries, and just forcing you to play it a little slower, it makes you feel more involved in fights, instead of just spamming your attacks or combos or whatever and trying to not get hit. So I spoke with a friend of mine who is a huge Souls game enjoyer, and he also played the original Vindictus, and he likes the changes. He thinks that the game is heading towards a good direction with it, but the Steam reviews say differently, and I personally have to admit that I enjoyed the over-the-top action and speed of the original game, and I preferred that over the slower version. But let's stick with the positive things, and what I can tell you, the controller is very well implemented. It feels very good to actually play with the controller, even better than mouse and keyboard. I think mouse and keyboard still needs work, especially using skills on tab, for example, is just weird, or jumping with F is also kind of weird. But the controller feels amazing, and this is a huge upgrade to original Vindictus. I also think that the AI follower system and the possibility to change your active character mid-mission are actually pretty cool. They allow you to see different characters in action by either controlling them or letting them fight with you, instead of just sticking to one character. But another good thing is that you can actually turn that off. If you just want to play completely solo, you can do that. What's also pretty cool is that these characters do not have a level system, so you only have to upgrade their gear and upgrade their skills by investing skill points and skill material. And another good thing is that the game actually feels very friendly towards solo players, so if you enjoy playing by yourself without any other players, the game is absolutely fully enjoyable as a solo player, at least if they follow that path. Which brings us to the bad things and the concerns that I have for the game. And I want to start with the combat system. As I already mentioned, this is just a personal thing from my perspective. I liked the over-the-top fast action of the original game, and I don't really like the idea of switching to a slower combat. But beyond that, I also have to say, even though the combat feels good, something is off. The original Vindictus offered lots of abilities that were woven into your combos, like that kind of altered your moveset. Vindictus Defying Fate, however, seems to focus more on active skills that you actually have to activate. And I think they're not really well implementable into your combos, so you have to use them separately, which feels like it disturbs the flow of the combat. And the actual flow of combat was a huge USP from original Vindictus, so I kind of feel like moving away from this idea is a bad thing, and I don't like it. They should probably stick with how the combat in original Vindictus worked. Let's come to the next point, and as someone who actually likes multiplayer and likes MMOs, my next gripe is the lack of multiplayer in this game. I think it's cool that solo players can enjoy the game and play the whole game solo, at least if they follow that direction. However, the original Vindictus was an MMO, and I was hoping to get another MMO where multiplayer is the actual focus of the game. My best memories are the content that was so hard that I had to play with my friends. We had to prepare and we had to do the whole stuff co-op because it was just very hard, especially the end game, to do it solo. But right now you have to play the story missions solo with your AI companions, which is most of the content. So you cannot play with friends at the moment. And these AI followers are really bad. Like they need work. They absolutely need work. The only way that multiplayer is actually implemented in the game at the moment are special boss missions, which are bigger bosses that you can queue multiplayer. However, they are far easier if you do them solo. Like 20 times easier. There's no reason to play them multiplayer. You could say that this is just an alpha problem, but by removing the MMO tag of the Steam page, I do think that they actually do not want to focus on the multiplayer aspect of the game. And if that's the case, that's a huge minus for me. But let's talk about the next thing that I miss. In original Vindictus, you had special interactions by throwing spears, for example, at weak points of the bosses, or by actually throwing small enemies around the battlefield onto other enemies, and you do not have any of these special interactions at the moment, so they kind of took them out. But maybe they just didn't have it in the alpha and it's going to be in the full game, so we will see about that. Another thing is that the story is a lot. Like, if you played the original Vindictus, you remember that if you didn't really want to read the story, or if you played a second character, you just had to hammer the spacebar to get through these story segments, because it was just so much text, and I can tell you, it's the same again. Even though it's voiced and it's mostly cutscenes, which are easier to watch, you still have long dialogues. And I'm someone who doesn't really care about the story of MMOs, so it's a lot to actually skip through. But I have to admit that if you like story, the voicing seems very good, and the whole cutscenes are also pretty good, so you might be able to enjoy the story if you prefer to actually see the whole story and read through the whole story. But I don't. All right, let's come to a conclusion about what we've seen so far about the game. So overall, with Vindictus Defying Fate, they are trying to take the base idea of Vindictus and they seem to shift it to a new direction, making it slower, making it more precise, and also more accessible for single player and story focused players, but also taking away from the MMO aspect and making it less multiplayer and less MMO-ish. So my question to you is, what do you think of this direction? Do you think it's a good thing? Do you think that it's a bad thing? Did you hope for them to just take Vindictus and make it new but stick with the original idea? Or please share your thoughts in the comment section below. When it comes to monetization, we don't know what we can expect, but it is Nexon, so I suppose there is going to be pay to progress, but we will see about that. If we have a bunch of new information about the game, I'm going to share them with you in another video. In the meantime, if you want to see me talk about another game, for example, the beta of Where Winds Meet, you can see it here. Just click on it and you will find out what you can expect from Where Winds Meet, which is actually a pretty good game. You should check out the video. You should absolutely do that. I recommend to check out the video. Just click on it. But if you do not click on it, have a great day. Thank you for watching. Bye bye.